All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are delighted to welcome you to another insightful session on connecting the dots. On behalf of HRAI, I extend a warm welcome to all our participants to today's discussion in this insightful topic. Work is changing faster than humans. Are organizations designing for reality or legacy? First and foremost, our heartfelt thanks to our esteemed speakers for joining us today and contributing their valuable perspectives to this panel discussion. Ms. Beena Bilani, Chief People Officer at Ascent Telecom Infrastructure. Mr. Praveen Anaswara, Chief Manager, Employee Relations at Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited. Ms. Sheena Vengale, seasoned L&D leader and keynote speaker. Mr. Vivekananda Kadukuntla, Learning Lead at Pega. We are truly honored to have such accomplished leaders with us, bringing their expertise and experience to today's discussion. To know more about our speakers, you may follow them on LinkedIn. Their profiles have been shared in the chat window. For more information about HRAI and upcoming events, please refer to the link shared in the chat. It's now my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Mr. Vivek, who will be leading this discussion with his deep insights and expertise. Over to you, Mr. Vivek.
Thank you so much, Faisal, and thank you to the HRAI team for setting the stage, and a warm welcome to everyone joining us today. Work is changing faster than humans. As someone who spends every day thinking about learning design, leadership, and how to build a growth mindset and enterprise scale, across the organization for all the employees, I think this is one of the topics that hits very close to home for me. Happy to be a moderator on this conversation today. Now, we are living in an era where technology updates overnight. Every other day, OpenAI or Anthropic, you hear a lot of news coming in, right? But human capability, our habits, and the organizational cultures, we do take time to marinate and then get matured as well. So it's like trying to probably run a 21st century software on a 20th century organizational hardware. In a sense, slight comparison for us to see if we are compatible like that. So the fundamental question isn't about whether work is changing. We know it is. It's very evident, looking at everything that's changing around us. But the question is whether we are bold enough to redesign our organizations for the reality of today, or if we are going to stay stubbornly anchored to the legacy of what worked so far, like the yesterday's policies and procedures, etc. So we have a phenomenal panel to unpack this with us. Thank you all, Sheena, Beena, and Praveen, for gracing us with your presence today on this discussion. And thank you to all the wonderful audience too. You showing up every Thursday means a lot to us, and it kind of encourages us as well as HRAI to bring more such conversations for all of us to collectively and continuously learn and upskill as well, right? So please share any questions you want to ask in the chat, and we'll do our best to address as many as we can, either during the conversation or towards the end of our conversation as well. So with that understanding, let's dive into the conversation. Sheena, I see you first on the screen, so let me start the discussion with you. And let's begin with the big picture, slightly a generic approach into the overall topic today. When we say our topic is work is changing faster than humans, from your perspective, what are one or two most significant shifts that you are currently seeing in the workplace or in the market that leaders need to be paying attention to, certain things that we cannot afford to ignore at this point in time?
Thank you, Vivek. It's such a pleasure to be a part of this panel, and the topic that is absolutely close to my heart. So, if I had to pick up one or two shifts that truly redefines the work right now, I would probably pick up two, which is kind of interconnected. And the first one is something that we already know, and I think everybody is talking about it. It is the shift from the stable roles to fluid work. And this is the talk of the town, and all of us know that work is no longer defined by fixed job descriptions that was there a couple of years ago. It is becoming modular, it is becoming project based, it is becoming increasingly driven by skills rather than roles. Nothing is role centric anymore. So if you look at the reality, team assemble, reassemble, business needs change, technology is augmenting certain decision making. And we also know that half-life of skills that we're actually talking about is dramatically shrinking. I was under the impression that the half-life of skills is 4 years until I attended this conference a couple of weeks ago, where I understood that the half-life of skills is not 4 anymore, it is 2. That's the kind of plight that we're in. So the implication right now is it's not about managing people, and that's not enough. Managing people is important, of course, but that's not enough. But what we need to also keep in the mind is to design system that enable continuous reskilling whenever the need is asked, faster redeployment of talent, and greater agility. And that's exactly what we should be latching on to. And the second shift, if I could just pick up some more of, couple of seconds, is the widening gap between the pace of change. We all know change is the only constant, but the fact that are humans able to be adaptable with the pace of change, and that's the shift. And it's time for us to go back and reflect on this particular question, because all of us have agreed to the fact that change is only constant and everything around us is changing. Are we able to adapt is the question. AI, technology, I mean, all these are obviously moving exponentially, but human capability, behavior, etc., all these are also, kind of changing. But the fact that we're not really looking at the skill gap at the moment, it is a lot to do with psychological and cognitive gap as well. And that's something that we will have to go back and discuss at the, right, in terms of having people at the center and having that particular conversation. So if I had to kind of connect these both back, I mean, very, very important, crucial aspects that we're actually talking about. Of course, it's about the change, and it's all fluid. But then, like you mentioned, Vivek, are we actually designing for the 20th century or the 21st century? Are we still anchoring on to yesterday's model, or are we in a position to kind of latch on to what is happening today and the future in the mind as well? So these are a couple of things that I think should be running behind our back as leaders, as any individuals for that matter, when we're latching towards this marathon called change. That's my take.
Thank you, Sheena. That's definitely a brilliant observation. I know I was trying to take notes and I couldn't catch up, so I do have some notes. The fluid modular work, and the second element that you talked about, adaptability and change, right? I think it got very powerful very quickly for us to have this conversation and then dig a little deeper. So thank you very much for that. It really highlights how the ground is shifting beneath our feet. But for us to navigate effectively, navigate this together, we also need to make sure that we are all speaking the same language to all the organizations, for us to understand and then navigate this. Maybe I can talk to Beena. I want to bring you in here to help us draw this, distinction between the past and the present a little more clearly. So to establish this shared understanding, the common language for us to move in the right direction, can we define our core terms? Because when we talk about a legacy system, maybe a process, maybe a structure, maybe a mindset, anything that we're talking about, what does it mean to you? Or in the contrast, even when we're talking about designing for reality, what does that environment look like? Is it possible for us to agree on some terms for us to continue the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for this opportunity to speak and for bringing me into this very, very important question. Because we have all, at some parts of our career, been involved in a situation where you're actually being pulled, especially in our roles as HR heads, between legacy and the future, right? So I think it's very pertinent to us. So thanks for raising this first. I think in my mind, legacy is not something that is only old. It actually means, in practical terms, something that is not working for you right now, right? Something that is not helping one person or an organization move ahead. And it doesn't serve the speed, it doesn't serve the complexity, it doesn't serve the need of the present or the future. And that is why we term it legacy. Now, this could be processes that have been driven through the years. This can be in terms of hierarchy or the way your working relationships are managed within the organization. This can be in terms of mindsets that are not working anymore. And what is today's reality? If we have to match it, we also have to understand what is happening in today's reality. Today's reality, we have a workforce which is demanding flexibility. It's asking for different type of working conditions. It's asking for compensation based on the work and the skills that they possess and that they demonstrate, and not only the role or the designation that they're holding. Then there's AI everywhere, in every process, in every function, right? And there is a multi-generational workforce as well. We are dealing with different generations within the same office as well. So, and then of course we have geopolitical realities, but these are slightly lesser in our control. Everything else is, right? And all of these affect our work in a very, very close way. So how do we marry something that is called legacy? Thing that is our actual reality today is something that each and every leader has to sort of think and reflect every day and understand what to do. Some practical aspects could lead to an organization becoming more adaptive instead of being very inflexible or rigid in terms of how it thinks, right? And then how do we influence our thinking to become in all functions more skill-based instead of role-based or designation-based? And this could be in terms of the work allotment. It could be in terms of training. It could be in terms of promotion. It could be in terms of increments based on the actual work being done by a person or based on the actual skills that a person possesses, regardless of how many years you've spent or regardless of the designation that you hold today, right? So based on the actual value that a person brings to the table, I think that is going to become very, very important to marry the two. That's how we can design for reality. Collaboration is going to become one very important skill and a bridge with which we can sort of work with each other, because no role is going to be very, very individual focused. We're not all sort of researchers sitting on our own desk doing our own individual jobs, and nothing against individual researchers, by the way. It's just talking about more how work is shifting today in today's offices. And instead of siloed approaches, how do we take a collaborative approach to problem solving, to business generation, to growth of the organization, and to talent management as well, right? How do we use collaboration as a very powerful and effective tool is going to be another important way where we can marry the legacy with today's reality, and being deeply aligned to outcomes and human experience together, because it has become a habit for many of people in the workforce today to say that, मैंने तो अपना कर दिया, सामने से जवाब नहीं आया, or I have followed up and there's no response, or I did my bit and it's your turn, because we've sort of been trained, I think, from childhood to become this factory operating model where one person does one part and the next person does the next, and it's difficult to collectively look at the whole picture because we are not trained to, but we must train ourselves to. That's not an excuse. I think each of us as adults and professionals have this responsibility to work on ourselves and train ourselves to look at the bigger picture compulsorily every day, right? And that is how reflection will happen, to understand what is the next best step to take in our work. And while we are talking about legacy, not all things legacy are going to be bad, because our country was built on very, very strong foundations and very strong ethics. And we have seen different generations building great businesses within our country itself. So everything legacy is not bad. That's not what we're saying here on this talk show. We must pick up the best. We must follow the thinking principles. We must follow the ethics. We must follow the business mindsets that have led us to great success, and then look at the future and then try to see how we as individuals can become bridges between the two. I think that is when corporations will succeed.
Thank you, Beena. Thank you for that detailed explanation. And I love that distinction. I know typically anything that is old is termed as legacy, but there is a distinction between anything that is old as well. Certain things that do not work right now is what we should be able to work on and change. But certain foundational elements that are proven best practices, for that matter, we can continue to leverage or take inspiration from them. And I like how you not only defined the legacy or the reality that we are talking about, but also added some of the tips in terms of how do we take it forward, how do we address this as well.
Yeah.
So continuing on that one, Praveen, let's build on what Beena just defined or just provided from an input point of view. and see if we are able to look at the root cause as well. So my question to you is, what do you believe is the primary driver of this disconnect between legacy systems and the new reality of work? I mean, is it technology, employee expectations, business models, or probably something entirely different? What is it that you would like to put a pin on?
Yeah, thanks, Vivek. So before answering this question, I would like to appreciate HRA for selecting very relevant topics. And these are actually topics of the hour, like, which we should discuss. And taking cues from my fellow speakers as well, like Veena was mentioning about the collective work which we should do. Now, when you see the primary disconnect between the legacy systems and reality, there might be many. But what comes to my mind is probably the most important one of all those would be technology, because that is how technology has changed, and the point where we are standing now we are at a junction where we really don't know how to approach AI. Even many of the IT companies, if you see uh, those are closer to artificial intelligence, or probably they claim to be so. There's a confusion. So maybe it is not just because the AI is not accessible, or we do not have the resources for that. The primary reason could be the pain in changing the legacy systems. So, for example, if we take the structure of an organization, the structure probably would have been somewhere in 2000s or mid of 2000s. And now we are in 2026, where we have a large population coming from Gen Z, which Veena was also mentioning. Like we have to work together with different generations. So when we think through it, the question is, are we really putting the effort as well as time, or giving time to think about the design of the entire organization? It is not just about human resources, but thinking business as a whole. I would like to point one example from my company, which is Bharat Petroleum. So we generally produce petroleum products and then market them, you might be knowing. And we had this issue of the Strait of Hormuz being, closed almost, it's now, I think, 2 to 3 months. So it would be uh, wrong to not to touch the topic, because today now we are selling petrol on a loss of 25 rupees a liter. Would you believe that? This is the kind of situation we are going. So one liter when so now, in fact, our marketing team doesn't have to do much of a job. We don't want people to come and fill petrol from our pumps, because then we reduce loss. So this is the kind of situation we are in. The issue is like, even if you take the structure of oil marketing companies, much of them were designed probably to generate employment as well at that point of time, the public sector companies, and most of them for that matter. And yeah, we have changed a lot. We have used technology, but now the situation is the thought is like whether we can use the existing technologies, including artificial intelligence, to redesign the entire organization. In the sense, the structure of the organization, including HR, human resources. We still operate probably on a structure which might help, or which might be 10 or 15 years old. And after that, whether we have really put efforts and invested time in designing the entire system. So it's not just using AI for transactional jobs, but are we really using AI for transformational effect? So I feel the primary disconnect would be the inertia, or maybe the pain in dismantling the existing systems and creating the new systems, whether we are ready to do that. So this, I think, is very important, where we have to focus.
Thank you, Praveen. Really appreciate you touching upon the oil crisis as well. I wasn't sure, given the sensitivity of the issue, I should bring it up. But yeah, to reiterate, technology is changing every day very fast. And I sense that when you're saying, are we ready to change? I think agility is the problem at the core. Are we ready to, pivot if required very quickly and adapt to the new aspects? And of course, the structure. A lot of things that have been working traditionally continue to be the default go-to options for us, right? So is that the new reality that we are preparing for? Can definitely be a challenge. So let me come back to Sheena. Can we talk about the fallout of that, elements for us to ensure that we are prepared? So the question to you is, what are some of the significant risks for organizations that fail to move beyond the legacy systems? Again, when we say legacy, let that be processes, organizational structures, technology, etc. And do you see any potential for improvements or any friction or failure that we should be able to talk about? It appears that you are on mute, Sheena. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Sure. So the fact, of course, we've discussed this enough already in the 20 minutes of our conversation, that it's important for us to move beyond legacy systems as well. So the fact is, of course, I mean, anything related or pertaining to legacy isn't incorrect. I mean, that's something that we'll have to keep in the mind as well. It's been there for certain reasons. So the point right now is, even if we're apparently going back and looking at the shift, it's okay for us to go back and validate if certain nuances worked in the legacy. Why did it work? And can there be certain adjustments that can be made? It's not, the narrative cannot be that, okay, it's complete a shift delete of sorts. So that's one mindset I think is important for all of us to have. And of course, there will be risk in case we don't do any kind of adjustments. And I like the word adjustment because it's about something that's already worked, and for us to go back and see if certain things can be tweaked and adjusted. And that's exactly how the mindset would work as well. Now, if we don't do those adjustments is when the problem would start to come by. And that's where the friction will also come in as well. It's about how certain things how work needs to be done versus how it is allowed to happen. When we actually go back to legacy, we all understand that it's kind of hierarchical, or things were in control when you actually look at how things were done in the legacy side of the world, and the decision making was slightly linear. And do you think we would be able to kind of survive and thrive in a condition built around that? That's one question. So the shift is obviously required, else the friction would come in. And considering that we're talking about multi-generational workforce, the generation, the boomers, X's, Y's, or the millennials, or the Z's, and in some time alphas coming in. And I'm sure we're not ready for friction anytime. And the fact is, how do we ensure that we kind of go back and do those adjustments? How do we ensure that we kind of change certain mindsets to ensure that we do certain things the right way? And when friction comes in, and of course, that's where your decisions can take longer, your collaboration goes for a T, and and it becomes very difficult for us to go back and navigate through the systems. And that's why it's important for us to kind of ensure that we move. And of course, when we don't take care of that, or when we don't go back and do those adjustments, is when you see in a lot of surveys that people are not happy. There's attrition, there's disengagement, etc. And thanks to AI, I mean, we have knowledge at our disposal. And everything has changed. The learning has changed. The way we work has changed. Mentality has changed. Of course, we're talking about VUCA, Bunny, and Rupt world right now. Everything has changed. And it's important for us to analyze and understand the requirements of people as well. And people right now, when you talk about millennials and Gen Zs, because that's the major chunk of the population, they expect autonomy, they expect speed, they expect opportunity. I mean, when we go back to the traditional side of how we were doing things would not be aligned. So it's absolutely important. And the most important aspect is it's just not operational. It's about your emotional requirement that has to be taken care, and the psychological safety as well, which is the most important. So these are a few things that I think is absolutely important, and ensure that we do certain things that's relevant. Do a pulse check every now and then, so that we understand that we are into certain things that's absolutely relevant and add a lot of value.
Thank you, Sheena. Thank you for highlighting that. Again, as a quick recollection, not everything legacy is bad. Anything that is not working is what we should be reviewing and making adjustments or tweaking. So that's a great call out. And a lot of input that you shared also is related to the workforce. in terms of decision making or collaboration, or the multi-generational workforce that has come up a few times, right? So changing preferences, and the nature of the work itself is also changing. So a lot of those elements are definitely a good list of risks that we can talk about and be ready as well. But in continuation to this conversation, let me direct my next question to Bina. I'm very curious to hear from a CPO on this one. You have normally the advantage of being in control of the people side of the organization as well as the business side of the organization as well, right? So looking beyond just talent and the workforce, how does legacy mindset, again, legacy mindset in this context is certain things that are not working, not everything that is old, how do they hinder the critical business areas like innovation and agility that Praveen was talking about, and the ability to respond to market changes and keep yourself up to date in the ever competitive environment as well? So how are these areas being impacted with that legacy mindset?
And it's a very, very pertinent question, Vivek. Thank you. The most important thing that it does, if we understand legacy in the manner in which we're talking about legacy, which means that something is not working for your organization right now, and when it gets imbibed into the mindset of the organization, what does it hinder? It hinders the speed in a very bad way. Speed of how an organization moves in a very bad. It slows the entire organization down. And why? How? And why and how does it do that? Because innovation suffers because people are very scared to challenge the status quo. There is fear of failure, right? And nobody wants to do something that is different and not been done before. Then agility will suffer when the decision making requires to go through various levels of approvals, and you have to wait for sort of your document to pass through 4 or 5 tables, and then somebody will decide to say okay or not, and then you come back with more documentations. There again, your speed gets impacted. And I think market responsiveness suffers a lot because if we are comfortable with the legacy systems, then we're too intrinsically focused on what we're doing within the organization. And there is less focus on what is happening in the real world outside. And hence, your organization has not sort of accepted the external reality and moved towards that direction. Now, what else does this lack of speed do when there is everything so comfortable and so slow, then people start operating in silos, right? And again, the bigger picture gets missed. People stop trying to experiment because experimentation is such an important aspect of business success. Failure is important, success is important, experimenting is important. All of this goes away when you're trying to do certain things in a certain way, saying that यहाँ तो ऐसे ही होता है ना इतने सालों से, this is what we've been doing for so many years. And it has worked for us, because that's the bigger trouble. Because if an organization has seen success by doing things a certain way, then the very natural question is, why change? I have succeeded. I have the money, I have the potential, I have the product, and I have the customer base. So what is the reason for changing? And that's because you're not able to look at what's going to happen in the future, or you're not looking at current skill requirements. That could be a possibility, right? So when teams like this start operating in silos slowly, the information flow starts becoming slower, right? Then decision making becomes slower. The collaboration will reduce. These are all natural fallouts of everything that happens when the slowness starts creeping into an organization. And of course, you have resistances of all kinds. And then you want to wait for certainty before acting. I need to have all the answers before I do something. I think that is another fallout of this thing, because in business, at least, you cannot wait for everything to be perfect, or for you to have every answer in a very certain way before going ahead with doing something. You have to be okay with taking this amount of risk and having this much information, and this part is not okay, and all of that is okay. You have to work in a system which is not complete and not completely maybe black and white. So how do you function effectively in that? I think that is a mark of a true leader. And I think that is where HR and leadership play a very important role, because they are trying to create a culture where adaptability is not a training program. adaptability is not something written in your values, or you're not measuring it in your KRAs or doing something, or it is not an expectation, but it becomes a capability. So how do you, as an HR leader and as an organization leader, make adaptability a capability within each and every employee of your organization? I think is a task that is upon all of us, because that is when an organization will be able to pivot very quickly, because that adaptability will lead to understanding what's happening in the market, and then the organization pivoting to the next level. And I think, and that is why it is so important.
Thank you, Beena. Thank you very much. I know when we talk about agility, it's not just as fast or the speed with which we run, right? They also say, will we be able to pivot and then change direction if required as quickly as necessary? That's what agility is all about. And a lot other factors that you were talking about, slowing down of decision making for that matter, or a little bit of resistance because certain things are established and they have been working traditionally well. So a lot of people tend to hold them very close and then say, especially if it is working, why do you want to change? And the old adage, right? Don't meddle with anything that's already working or it's not broken. So I know all of those come into the picture. But Praveen, I want to pick your brain to talk about people making those choices. Some of this resistance, some of this behavior that we typically tend to observe. So the question is, how does operating within a legacy framework impact the overall quality and speed of leadership decision making? And as a contradiction, right, especially when the market demands rapid responses. The expectation is like for your oil crisis right now, there are certain things that are happening every day, and then there is a real world problem every morning you wake up. But at the same time, if there is a legacy mindset that you're dealing with inside an organization, how does that work? How does that impact?
Vivek, in fact, a part of this was explained by my fellow speaker. The speed of information is also very important now. In fact, there's a common saying that, especially which is relevant today, is that delayed decisions are often wrong decisions. In this scenario, it probably was not long time back. Like people used to think for a long time before doing something. But today, maybe it's not true for every organization, but for most of the organizations, if we keep on delaying things, it may not be the right thing to do. So instead of just speaking about the systems as such, I think I would like to connect it with the culture of the organizations, because if we just take culture and systems in two different categories, it may not work. Why these legacy systems persisted or probably remained in the organization is something about the culture of the organization. We all have heard about the famous quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and which is followed by another thing that the structure eats strategy again for dinner. So the problem is basically like we have been comfortable with the existing structures for such a long time. And now we have a very powerful tool with us, if you really look at it, that is artificial intelligence. So using artificial intelligence for transformational activities is something which is the solution. If we don't do that, AI may remain in some pockets of the organization. Mostly, this will remain with the IT department, because they fear, or probably the management would fear, that if AI reaches every employee of the organization, it may create challenges rather than transformation. Probably this is one which most of the organizations have, so they play it very safe. This I would like to introspect, including oil marketing companies, including BPCL also. We do have reservations on this, all of us has. But it's always important to understand that AI is little weird. It has got, in fact, weird powers, not just transformational powers. We probably, if we use it for the right design of the organization and many other things, including succession pipeline or leadership pipeline, whatever, it can do wonders. This fear in our mind that if we kind of unleash the power of AI, to a larger chunk of employees. So this is something which might be limiting us. So certainly, if we don't think that way, the decision making will suffer. And it is not that we may not take the right decisions, but taking those decisions at the right time without delay is something which we all will have to practice using the new resources available. So that's what I wanted to put on table. Yeah.
Thank you, Praveen. Really appreciate that. And I know delayed decisions are perhaps wrong decisions in some instances. But traditionally, I've also heard a lot of people say, like you said, have you slept on it? Are you sure
Yeah.
you want to go ahead? Or, did you give some time to ensure that it's not changing? You are really, thorough with everything that you had to do as well. But yeah, times are changing. And
Vivek, just one thing, if you can permit. We had a business head in our INC business, industrial and commercial business. So he used to tell us that you should always give priority to speed over elegance, though we were a little doubtful about it. And he himself landed in many weird situations because of that. And even there was a vigilance case against him. But I would like to tell that the change that person brought to the organization was tremendous. So are we ready to take the pain is one of the questions. It may have consequences. It will not come without consequences, that is for sure. Just wanted to add this here.
Some leaders do have that strong ability to influence and plow through, right? I remember one of the quotes I've heard from my leaders to say, you can ask for permission and wait forever, or you can do what you want and then ask for forgiveness later as well. So if you have the right ingredients and you strongly believe that this is the right thing to do, forgiveness probably can come a little easy at a later point in time as well. So yeah, thank you. And one another key element that Praveen mentioned is the culture and systems, as well as using AI for transformational activities across the organization. Don't let it be an IT thing, but everybody, if we are able to adopt AI, we might be able to make the transformation successful as well. So Sheena, coming back to you, this is a topic that you and I can probably brainstorm for hours. Every time we talk about culture or enablement, let's say, becoming aware or upskilling is going to be an integral part of that, right? So how should L&D strategies, that we do day in and day out, or yearly plans, etc., how do we change to build this workforce that is not just prepared for today, but also resilient and adaptable for the future that's yet to come as well?
The time is gone where we focus on delivering, courses and content. It's not about how many people attended your training. It's not about were the folks happy about attending the learning and all of that. They're almost dead and gone. We're not looking at that right now. So L&D has shifted. I mean, I think one function that is apparently or needs to shift the entire 360-degree is learning and development, for that matter. So, we discussed this. I mean, I started off my conversation with the shelf life of skills, and it is massively shrinking, 4 years to 2 years. And you never know, you'll get to a stage where the shelf life of certain skill will be less than a couple of months. Or maybe you'll get into a stage where maybe you're looking at cross-skilling, reskilling some cohort. By the time the cross-skilling, reskilling is over, the change is gone by. So what are you ensuring that you're ready with? It's helping people learn how to learn. I think that's the massive shift. The minute we go back and look at things like that in terms of helping people learn how to learn and the nuances around it, I think our job is well done, because it's never about the skills anymore. It's about, of course, how do we ensure that we build the capability, and the capability in question can keep changing. That's one massive shift. So it's not about delivering courses, delivering content. It's about ensuring that we embed learning as a part and parcel of people's life. And that's why we call it learning and the flow of work. And we don't just call it's just not a word in itself. It is the beauty is, how do we ensure that we make it contextualized? How do we make it continuous? And how do we ensure that we embed it as a part of their journey? So it cannot be a standalone. The minute you and I go back and sell standalone programs or standalone interventions, I'm sure the business would not have the time. We're talking about speed. People will have no time to go back and do a 8 hours or a 9 hours course. They don't want to spend so much of time. However, if we can look at how do we want to plug it in a manner that it is embedded as a part of work or the flow of work, I think that's another massive shift that we're actually looking at it. And of course, AI is there. Like I said, knowledge is right at people's disposal. But then the fact that we'll have to ensure that we help people understand the, let's say, the AI augmented mindset first. Be friends with AI. I mean, it's not the AI has not come to you for competition. It's your mate, it's your partner, and do not make AI your boss. So these are certain nuances, augmented mindset that we will have to probably include while we're talking about, and that's important in the kind of world that we're in right now. So these are few changes, and of course, when we do that, of course, we ultimately end up building the right kind of agility, and we no longer teaching any kind of skills. We're just helping people learn how to learn, unlearn, and relearn. The minute we help them with that, I think the job is almost well done.
Spot on, Sheena. Thank you very much. I'm just coming out of a session titled "How to Show Curiosity at Work," so there's nothing more related to helping people learn to learn as well. And I completely agree. Learning can no longer be an event or a workshop. It has to be a continuous flow of work as well. And speaking of flow, I know I'm still a little hung up on Praveen's recommendation on AI should be a transformation across the organization and not an IT tool. Praveen, I want your take on this one. I'm coming to you one more time. How can organizations leverage these tools, not just for efficiency? I mean, transformation can mean, can we do better? Can we do quicker? Can we do, faster, etc. But how can we use these tools to create a more human-centric and fulfilling work experience? Is that a possibility too? Something that you want to share a little more on?
A very interesting question. So the question itself carries kind of contradictions within, because when we move away from legacy systems, start using AI for transformation, it may result in a way that the organization is designed in the leanest way. So in that sense, it may not be so human centric, because we have removed a part of our workforce because of AI. You have been, if you design an organization the perfect way, the ideal way, I'm just talking about that. So then obviously a part of your workforce is going to go. Then this we are actually watching nowadays in many companies. It's not that they want to send these people out or send their employees out, but it's because they find that when you use AI, they can actually do the job efficiently. As simple as that. That is one part of it. But the question actually is how to make it more human centric. So one thing, in fact, I in my team, I have my management trainee who just joined 6 months back. So he is from IIM Ranchi. So in fact, in PSUs, we say that we don't need people from IIMs because there's nothing great there's nothing great probably about the design of the organization. So these are mostly transactional jobs, unless you reach a particular position. This is the reality in many of the organizations. So obviously, but the question is not about their aspirations. Their aspirations is at one level. Now, when he came and when we had conversations, so I was just taking some printouts in the sense. So he was asking why so many printouts in the office, and we had actually migrated to this digital record keeping. In fact, long back, probably 5 years back. Somehow it has not happened. So he was little worried about the number of paper which, and I can see it frustrated. So I would like to go back to what Sheena was mentioning, and even Beena was also talking about it, the generational shift which has happened, and their aspirations are completely different. So though this was a small thing, looking at, and we all are looking at, is freedom, whether it is in life or probably in work also. Why do we save time? We save time probably to do things which are much more meaningful to us, right? I think we all will agree that. So the meaningfulness in life and work is very important. So if you work for 16 hours, 18 hours a day, and if you don't get quality time to do something which you really think is meaningful, or probably doing the same work in a meaningful way, that can also be the chance. So now bringing AI into this, one great thing which AI can do is it can release time for you. It can release quality time for all of us. And maybe probably we are using AI to draft a impactful email, or probably to create posters, or like Sheena was mentioning, to transform the learning system. So the work may be kind of transactional to transformational. But what AI essentially does is it gives us that freedom. At least it gives us moments of freedom where you can reclaim your professional work and your life also. And this, I think, the later generations like the Gen Z, or probably the next generation is going to come, they all will look at this thing. So one thing which the top management will have to uh, focus is like how to use AI in a way which helps people find their moments of freedom.
Thank you, Praveen. I do appreciate that as a perspective, using AI or any technology to elevate the human experience and not erase it. Though it's
Yes.
the possibility for us, we'll have to pick and choose where we want to inject and then do that. But for us to make these massive changes as well, where to use and where to not use, it's probably also important for us to understand whether it's actually working or not. So, Bina, I'll come to you. Last question from my side, maybe for today, before we, address a couple of questions that I see are coming up in the chat. As organizations embark on this transformation with AI or technology in general as part of preparation for today and the future, what are some of the key metrics or indicators we should consider to measure the progress and confirm that we are designing for reality? We are moving in the right direction, so we can continue to plow through and then make progress.
Yeah, again, very pertinent question, and thank you for the wonderful thoughts. All the speakers before me and you, Vivek. I think some very basic metrics, right? Getting down to the basics, I think is very important, even when you're talking about the future or when you're talking about transformation and AI. We have to see how we are measuring on a few items like speed, on capability, on business reality, right? So speed, for example, how much time does an employee take to become productive once he or she joins or joins the organization, right? Or takes up a new role. How fast is he or she going to be productive? I think is going to be an important aspect of understanding where we are heading. Then, in terms of learning or employees, if you look at it from their point of view, how many internal roles we have been able to mobilize and give opportunities to different people as a result of their upskilling, right? Again, what is the percentage of workforce that has been reskilled for the future, either on their own, which is more important, or as an effort from the company? And why is reskilling important when the employee chooses it by himself or herself? I think it's also because, one, you show that you have that hunger in your belly to do something that is related to what is going to change in the future, and you want to stay relevant to the organization and to the job. And hence, you are investing your time, effort, and sometimes money in learning what is going to be important for you to do your job tomorrow, right? I think that is why voluntary learning is very, very important. Then, in terms of culture, I think the element of trust is going to be very important because we are in times of very great change. We are intersecting between machines and humans. Part of the work is done by a bot, part is done by human. Then you have gig workforce, and then you have external realities. And so the element of trust, even if measured by a simple survey, and all throughout, does the board trust you? Do you trust your customers? Internally, is the sales trusting the finance? Do I trust my CEO? Does the project guy trust the HR guy? Things like that. So even if you go like a 360 degree of forget everything else, no engagement, no happiness index, no nothing, just trust. Do I trust these people that I'm working with in these very great times of change? I think is going to be very, very important. And other important aspect I think is going to be very important is manager effectiveness. Though we are in a changing scenario where we are saying that it's okay to have sort of individual contributors, and they will somehow learn how to collaborate wherever they're sitting in whichever geography, and they will also learn how to speak to systems if they're working with bots and something. But I think at least in our country, still we have a very great dependency on middle managers or people managers, regardless of the level they are at, because they sort of become the bridge between what the board and CEO are saying and what the rest of the employee base is saying, right? And so we're translating vision from here to here, and we're translating performance from here to here. And that is why this mass of people is very, very important. Uh, and because they are holding such a critical and important role, especially in this time when they're supposed to know who should be trained on what future skill, who should occupy which next role, which part of the work should be transitioned to AI. Decisions like these, which are very important, if they are in ineffective hands, then the organization suffers in the short term and the long term, because AI is now, no, AI is not something that's coming 10 years hence. AI is now, transformation is now, technology is now, and market reality is now. War is also now, right? So if this power is in a hand which is not effective at understanding this entire landscape, then the organization is going to suffer. And that is why it's important to have very, very strong middle managers, right? So managerial effectiveness is going to be important. Another, I think, business imperative is going to be the quality of leadership pipeline, because while this transformation is happening, many leaders are going to transition either out of fear or out of job losses or out of getting opportunities in a different kind of setup or industry or whatever. And when they do transition, which is fine, at least we should have a next set which is sort of able to pick up the ball running and not let the organization suffer in the meanwhile. Simple things like operations cannot suffer, network cannot suffer, medical facilities cannot suffer, right? Industries where other countries are dependent on us for running their back processes, they cannot suffer. So things like that, very, very practical realities where we must have a good quality and a good number of leaders who are ready to take up the next best role, right? So I think these 3, 4, or 5 items, if we take care of, we're sort of ready and safe as an organization.
Wonderful, Beena. I'm so glad I'm talking to all of you and having these conversations. And I use AI daily, so I'm excited to look at the transcript and then make some sense out of the overall responses and conversations we've had. It looks like a small masterclass that we can revise and ensure we continuously learn as well. So thank you very much. But I agree with you too for the response that you shared. Whatever we measure, I think we should be able to manage or we should be able to improve, but only if we are measuring the right things for the right reasons as well. So great input. Thank you very much. We do have a couple of questions in the chat from our audience, from our participants. Let me take the first one. Let me read out the first one. Tell me if you're interested to share your input. In your experience, which legacy assumption about employees or productivity is the hardest for organizations to let go of? Is there a one phrase or a one word answer for anybody?
This is how it happens here.
It's always been like this. This is what happened. Yeah, thank you. How do generational differences influence the tension between legacy work models and modern expectations?
Can you repeat that again?
How do generational differences, the multi-generational workforce that we're talking about, right, influence the tension between legacy work models and the modern expectations?
I think to some extent, when you actually talk about these generational differences, it's hyped to some extent is what I believe. I say that because, according to me, categorizing certain folks in certain generations, of course, we have our reasons to do that, but not necessarily that's the right way to probably lead. For example, there could be a Gen Z who would probably have a boomer mindset, or there could be a Gen X who's apparently Gen Z, or a boomer who has a Gen Z mindset. I'm sure all of us have come across folks like that. So when you go back and condition is the only problem. The solution to it is sit back, have mindful conversations, outcome-driven conversation. A Gen Boomer will also understand, a Gen Z will also understand. It's all about getting folks together and help each other untangle whatever the problem that we're actually talking about, and then just ease that out is what I absolutely feel.
Thank you. And there is one last comment, I would say, instead of a question. It says, does the organizations replace AI for humans instead of transformation or adaptability? I'm not able to completely get the gist of that question, but that could just be me. If you have anything you would like to respond to that comment, please let us know.
I think it's AI replacing humans, but then I think Sridevi wants to know if there's a stage where humans can replace the AI of sorts. I think can we look at the extreme bit of transformation is what Sridevi is asking. You never know. Or rather, the reality is working in tandem. I think that's going to just stay as is. AI and humans, all of us are here to stay, and working in tandem is the mantra.
And
So,
if there is
Vivek-
more, yeah, Praveen, please continue. Sorry.
So just adding to what Sheena was telling, so it's basically probably about the top management taking a decision on this. So we don't have a straight answer to this. Like, so training is one thing which can resolve this to an extent, because if you give enough opportunities, like Sheena was mentioning, the ability to learn how to unlearn and relearn, or probably change the learning patterns. So this is one thing. In fact, delaying the decision for training employees on AI would cost the organization, would cost the
Indeed.
organizational transformation as well. So yeah, probably there is no need for replacing humans with AI. It's a question of how you leverage AI for transformation, and maybe using the existing workforce or probably a different set of workforce. It's difficult to say, but certainly not training your employees, not making them aware or empowered with AI is probably would be a crime that organizations should be doing. So the faster we do it, the better.
Right.
Wonderful. Agreed. Thank you for addressing that. And before I pass it on to Faisal, I know he's looking at us given the time. Any 30 seconds closing thought from each of you? Sheena, we'll start with you.
We talk about future of work, but the future is already here. It's just that it's not evenly distributed. Just ensure that you're ready, learn, unlearn, and relearn. That's the only mantra to succeed, I believe. So yeah, that's my quick 30 seconds.
Wonderful. Love that. Praveen?
I'd
What's your
like to
final thought?
reiterate that let's not use AI for transaction. Yeah, obviously you can use it, but let's use it for something bigger, something transformational, and for creating that moments of freedom and meaningfulness. This might be my 30 seconds.
Appreciate that. Beena, any piece of advice from you?
Yeah, just one. I think don't wait for disruption to create any kind of transformation. Transform anyway. I think it is our duty to reflect along with doing our work. We need to reflect, think about what we need to do next. Whatever is the next best step, just take it, go ahead with it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you all. The insights today have been very incredible. As I said, I'm looking forward to a summary and a master class as a result of this webinar. So we have talked about unlearning legacy behaviors, or anything that is not working, empowering leaders and HR as architects, and how we can use technology or AI, specifically to amplify how we can be prepared for our future as well. With that, thank you very much to all the audience as well for asking questions and being wonderful participants around. Back to you, Faisal. Thank you for bringing us together.
Thank you, Vivek, for skillfully steering the discussion and ensuring a seamless flow of ideas and excellent engagement. We truly appreciate your dedication and commendable moderation. Thank you to all our esteemed panelists. For those eager to learn and grow, the recording of today's session is available on our YouTube link shared in the chat window. Thank you to all our participants for being part of the session. Your presence have made this discussion even more meaningful. We look forward to welcoming you to our next session on the topic busy is not equal to productive, why modern work feels full but achieves less on May 14, 2026. With that, we conclude today's webinar. Thank you for being part of this journey. Take care and farewell for now. Thank you, dear speakers, once again. It's been a real pleasure having you with us on this webinar.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, Faisal. Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Sheena.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Vivek.
Anand.
Yeah.
Thank you, Praveen.
Thanks, everyone. We'll continue the conversation. Take care. Yeah.